Hey guys, welcome back to Caffeine and Crime and to another episode of Spooky Season. I am serving a Glam Reaper moment. You guys can check it out. I will have it linked in the description. But yeah, full force, full effect spooky season going on over here. I hope you guys are enjoying both spooky seasons. Don't forget, there is a new spooky season episode every Tuesday on the podcast that is linked down below. So you can kind of get double spooky places here on Friday and Tuesday on the podcast. And that is exactly what we're doing today, taking it back to season 4, episode 3, The Stanley Hotel. Editing back through this episode has been a lot of fun because I'm currently reading The Shining. I absolutely love that book. Always takes me forever to read it, of course, anything from Stephen King, but I absolutely love it. It's perfect for spooky season. It definitely gets you, and the spooky feels for sure. But I was really excited to sit down and re-edit this one and relive everything from the Stanley Hotel. So I hope you guys enjoy. I hope that you guys are having a great spooky season. If you are starting to think to yourself, oh no, Halloween's right around the corner, and you're needing some makeup or even a little bit of costume inspiration, then I highly suggest you go check out my YouTube channel or my Instagram. I've been posting looks on both. And that is on my Allie Brienne platforms. You guys can find me on Instagram at AllieBrienne_MUA. And I'm doing looks like this over on my channel, having so much fun with it. And I'm also Allie Brienne here on YouTube as well. So if you don't get enough spooky content from me from this podcast, you can definitely get it from me there on that channel as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed the Stanley Hotel, and I will see you in the next one. Today we have the famous Stanley Hotel, and we're definitely going to get into the history of it, and then of course the spookiness, why it's haunted. I can say out of all of them so far, this is definitely one where I started digging for stuff and there wasn't much to really find. And we'll kind of get into that, but I was just really shocked. So this one's very lighthearted. If you're kind of uneasy about haunted things, spooky things, I mean, you're probably not listening to this podcast in the first place. But if you don't like that type of ordeal, or you don't like true crime or anything like this, this is probably going to be a really good episode for you, because I do think it's going to be mainly history, and then a little bit of some haunting things, but nowhere near like as intense as the last two, and they weren't even that intense. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to grab some caffeine, and then we're going to jump straight into the Stanley Hotel. The Stanley Hotel was built by Freelan Oscar Stanley of Stanley Steamer fame and opened on July 4th, 1909 as a resort for upper-class Easterners and a health retreat for sufferers of pulmonary tuberculosis. The hotel and its surrounding structure are listed on the National Register of Historic Places, though. And today on the blog, which is linked in the description, I will have photos and links of things that I talk about today, but the first few photos are going to be of the Stanley Hotel when it opened in 1909, which is really cool, and also Freelan Oscar Stanley himself. But there will be more current photos of the Stanley now because, as we know, it is a very popular place now, but it wasn't always. It actually struggled in the late 20th century, but has been revitalized since the 1990s. And the newest owner has invested millions of dollars in upgrades and improvements, and it's quite the hotel. So back in 1909, the first class resort helped make Estes Park into a tourist destination, especially after the establishment of Rocky Mountain National Park in 1915. So, Freelan Oscar Stanley was born in Kingsfield, Maine. He first saw the Estes Valley in 1903 when he was 54. He had recently been diagnosed with tuberculosis, which doctors said would claim him within months. He's a very wealthy man, best known for the dry plate photographic process and steam-powered automobile he developed with his twin brother.
It says he immediately set out for the dry area of Colorado and soon drove one of his Stanley steamer cars from Lyons to Este Park, and that was actually the first automobile to be driven into Este Valley. After a remarkably quick recovery, he decided in 1904 to build this house, and it's his house, emerging into the town of Este Park, where he would spend summers for the rest of his life until he died in 1940. And by 1907, Stanley had started planning the build of a grand hotel that was going to kind of be based around the style he had for his own house, but also a take on the classic East Coast resorts such as Breakers in Florida, the Mountain View House in New Hampshire, and the Grand Hotel in Mackinac Island, Michigan. Este Park was not on a railroad line, however, so no good roads, or I guess like roads weren't like really around in the area, and that was going to have to be very important to get people to come to the resort. So he led efforts to improve North Street, I think it's Vane or Vurain, I don't know, and South Street Vurain roads, making it possible for tourists to drive through Este Park on a loop that started and ended in Lyons. So in October of 1907, hotel construction began on a rocky hillside facing south towards Long's Peak. Since he pretty much designed his house, it's a probability that he designed most of the hotel himself, but he did have an architect and a team that built the actual hotel. And like his Estate Park house, which he had planned, it was to be a very elegant structure. This 4-story building was, and it still is, like this symmetrical style and strong horizontal lines, and they stand in stark contrast to both the rugged natural backdrop and the prevailing tendency towards rustic designs and mountain hotels at the time. But the difference with this resort was that Stanley said it was a summer resort. So the main building was planned to be without heat and was originally open from June to September. The rest of the hotel complex had a casino building for entertainment and dancing, but it's actually quoted here, not gambling. A carriage house for the hotel's Stanley steamers, and several service buildings. Was situated across the roughly 150-acre property. The buildings were all painted a mustard yellow color that was supposed to resemble East Coast resorts. And by the time it was finished, the entire project cost Stanley at least $200,000, possibly as much as $500,000 at the time. And while the hotel was under construction, he invested heavily in the town's infrastructure. In the course of just a few weeks, he played a huge role in establishing the town's first bank, its water company, its hydroelectric plant, and he later helped start the town's sewer system and its public golf course. This is so awesome though. I feel like I know this is more like a history thing for you guys, but I just found this all to be interesting because this is stuff I never knew, but this guy was pretty awesome. And of course, all of these would contribute, to the success of the Stanley Hotel. Some of such as the Fall River hydroelectric plant, which was originally built for the hotel before being expanded to serve the town as well. But still, that's a lot that, he helped do for the town. The hotel, called the Stanley only after locals petitioned the reluctant owner to name it after himself, opened on June 22nd, 1909. It featured 88 guest rooms, an all-electric kitchen designed by Stanley and powered by his Fall River hydroelectric plant. The first guests were members of the Colorado Pharmaceutical Association, who convened at the hotel for their 20th annual meeting. After the success of the hotel's first season, construction began on the manor house next to the main building, essentially a scaled-down version of the main building. It was ready by the next summer. Its 33 rooms were fully heated, unlike the main building, so now it allowed the hotel to operate year-round. The Stanley First Golden Age lasted through the 1910s, when Rocky Mountain National Park was established and Estate Park tourism boomed. During these years, a fleet of Stanley steamer automobiles whisked guests up to the hotel from railroad depots in Loveland, Longmont, and Lyons. The Stanley was a model mountain resort of a kind that had previously existed primarily in the Colorado Springs area, complete with a 9-hole golf course, tennis courts, lawn and indoor bowling, and billiards. It had its own private water plant, laundry, and garage. On weekends, guests could enjoy an afternoon on the veranda, attend the Saturday evening dance at the casino, and watch the Sunday afternoon concert in the music room. Despite its high prices, $5 to $8 a night, you gotta think though, at this time, other hotels at Estes Park were only charged $1 or $2. So can you imagine staying in a hotel for under $10? The Stanley generally spent more than it made, though. The profits of the Stanley Motor Carriage Company covered the hotel until Stanley sold the company in the late 1910s. After that, the hotel received few remodels until 1926, when Stanley sold it to the group of Milwaukee investors who refurbished the interior with new paint, carpet, and drapes. The group soon faced mounting debts, however, and in 1929, Stanley managed to reclaim title to the hotel in a foreclosure sale. That would be so sad to build something from the ground up and then have to sell it because of not being able to keep it in business and it not having a lot of business. It's so sad. And I mean, it happens all the time, but it's just devastating to see. He almost immediately had to resell it to Roe Emery, who owned the Estes Park Chalets, as well as the Rocky Mountain Motor Company. His transportation company turned a tidy profit, allowing him to upgrade the Stanley. In 1935, he redecorated the bedrooms, added new light fixtures, replaced the hydraulic elevator with an electric one, and repainted the exterior from the original mustard yellow to the now classic white. Emery also indulged the hotel's founder, who continued to have lunch there, attend concerts, and sit in his favorite rocker at the veranda until his death in 1940. So that is awesome that he loved the hotel's founder and, he was still around the Stanley and on the property of the Stanley until his death. That's awesome. Now we're kind of getting into the post-war decline, which we see in a lot of these cases of these properties, and just seeing how bad and how hard times got. In 1946, Emery sold the Stanley to Abel Management Company, later Abel Hotel Company. In the early 1950s, the new owners made several changes in an attempt to adapt the Grand Resort to the more informal style of post-war tourism. A swimming pool was installed in the front lawn, which I find very strange. Why the front lawn? Was there not enough lawn in the back? And the carriage house was converted from a garage to a motel. It's kind of strange. The carriage house motel did not last long, however, and for much of the late 20th century, the building was boarded up and used for storage. In 1966, Abel sold the Stanley once again. For the next 2 decades, the hotel passed through several sets of owners. The hotel had never made much, if any, profit, and owners without an independent fortune or another cash-generating business soon found that operating the Stanley made little financial sense. The property changed hands every few years and gradually deteriorated as maintenance and upgrades were deferred. Despite that, the Stanley was listed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1977. Oh, if only Stanley was alive to see that happen, though. In 1974, things took a turn when the famous Stephen King, at the time, I believe he only had 2 books. I think this was his 3rd book. Him and his wife stayed at the somewhat shabby Stanley. This is back when there was no heat. The building was actually about to close for the season. You kind of get the idea of where he was going with his book. And while there, King got the idea for a story about a man who goes crazy at a remote hotel that is closed for the winter. And it resulted in The Shining, the book from 1977, in which the Overlook Hotel stands for the Stanley. And then the famous 1980 Stanley Kubrick film, based on the novel, was not filmed at the Stanley, but a 1990s television miniseries made with King's input and included scenes filmed on site, which is really cool, and I didn't even know that. In the late 1970s, one owner attempted to turn a profit through the timeshare program, but that failed, and the hotel went through bankruptcy proceedings in the early 1980s. The next owner remodeled the hotel once again, and in 1984, the main building finally got some heat. Still, it struggled, and the Stanley landed back in bankruptcy in the early 1990s. Its fortunes finally began to change in 1995, which is such a good year, that is my birth year, when the Grand Heritage Hotel Group brought it through bankruptcy court for $3.1 million. The company immediately undertook extensive remodeling with the goal of restoring the hotel to its status as a first-class resort. And under the Grand Heritage Hotel Group, the Stanley has embraced its association with The Shining and its reputation as a haunted hotel, both of which have helped revive the hotel's business, of course. It's a new day and age, and all of us youngins are like obsessed with the haunted stuff. The room where King stayed, 217, is now the most requested room at the hotel. The 1980 film version of The Shining plays on a continuous loop on one channel of the hotel's televisions. In 2013, the hotel began to host an annual horror film festival, and in 2015, it built a huge hedge maze on the front lawn based on the similar maze in the film, that's freaking cool. The hotel also offers a variety of tours and packages focusing on ghosts, haunted places, or haunted spaces, and paranormal phenomenons. They were set back once again with the flood of September of 2013, which washed out several roads to Estee Park and hurt tourism to the area. Stanley suffered little damage, however, and after the flood, it actually accelerated with expansions to take advantage of post-flood state financing and to boost the local economy. John Cullen, the owner of the Grand Heritage Hotel Group, who owns it, announced plans to build a new wellness center near the hotel to capitalize on the trend of healthy vacationing. In addition, in early 2015, he secured a $46 million loan to help pay for what is planned to be the largest expansion in the Stanley's history. Buildings across the property will receive new roofs, air conditioning, carpet, and paint. And in 2016-2017, the hotel will also add a new 50-room luxury residence hotel connected to the future wellness center, as well as a film center, an amphitheater, and a large pavilion to host health seminars, corporate retreats, and weddings. So there's a little bit of the history of the Stanley, and roughly maybe 15 minutes or under, just to kind of get it out of the way. So you kind of know the history. It just sounds like a hotel that started with such a dream in mind and slowly just went to shit. And it's so sad. So it's like really cool that something as a book and then a film that just becomes so popular really helped this place, because there's no telling where the Stanley would be today without Stephen King. I do think that that is really cool. We are going to go ahead and get into some of the spooky and hauntedness of this episode, and we're going to take it back to the fall of 1974. So the hotel is about to close down for the season, as we know, and writer Stephen King and his wife stopped for the night at an old hotel overlooking the city. So the articles above had mentioned about how he got the idea while he was staying there, and while you can definitely see it because they were there by themselves. Like, this is a huge ass hotel that is like not doing very well. It's very vacant, and they're the only guests staying there and like the presidential suite at the time. And it's about to close for the winter. So you can kind of see the connection there with that. And that's really cool that he ran with that. But actually, upon arriving, the Kings learned the hotel was closing for the winter and only a skeleton crew remained. Nonetheless, the couple was checked into room 217, the presidential suite, as the only paying guest. That night, the author had a nightmare in which he saw his young son being chased down the hotel's long, empty corridors by a predatory possessed fire hose. He woke drenched in sweat and stepped to the balcony to smoke a cigarette. By the time he stubbed it out, he'd worked out the bones of what would become his third novel and first bestseller, The Shining. So cool. But he was really freaked out with his stay there. And you can kind of see interviews and stuff like that he was very shaken up by his stay there. And it really helped with The Shining. But also, during the years since his death in 1940, the ghost of Mr. Stanley reportedly has appeared to guests checking in at the reception desk, and claims hold that the phantom of the late Flora Stanley, a pianist, sometimes can be heard tickling the ivories in the empty music room. Ooh. While some spots are more spiritually active than others, guests have reported strange occurrences: shadowy figures, eerie laughter, flickering lights, and items moving on their own. In every room on the hotel compound, which includes a century-old lodge and concert hall, in recent decades, the campus has hosted countless paranormal investigations, including by teams from Travel Channel's Ghost Adventures and Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters. Pros aren't the only ones who get to play here. Overnight visitors opting for the Ghost Adventure package are assigned to a room on the infamous fourth floor, a pocket-sized electromagnetic field reader, and other ghostly graph, including a mug bearing the chilling message, "REDRUM, murder spelled backwards," that King's novel contributed to. And a part-time paranormal investigator, he's also an author, Richard Estep, who leads ghost tours on the weekends, he says, "I always tell our tour group, I've investigated castles, dungeons, and buildings older than the US, and the Stanley is on top of that list." Crazy. He actually grew up in a haunted house that never gave up the ghost to him personally, but left him with a spirited passion for the otherworldly. And in 21 years of investigating for books and television shows on both sides of the Atlantic, he spent his time living in England's oldest witches' prison and a haunted hospital in Utah. I do think that's really cool, though. It says, "I'm convinced the Stanley is one of the more active locations out there." He says they deeply love this hotel. As hauntings go, the hotel is something of a phenomenon. Usually haunted locations have a history with lots of blood and death, but the Stanley doesn't have that, which often takes people aback. They want to know how many deaths have occurred here, and it's about as many as other hotels. Not that many. Crazy. Another ghost, Elizabeth Wilson, which is super funny because if you guys didn't know, probably not, because I don't talk about it a lot. My maiden name is Wilson, and I have a little sister named Elizabeth. But in 1920, there was a gas leak that led to an explosion in room 217 that destroyed the second floor above the main dining hall and nearly killed a chambermaid, Elizabeth Wilson. And some say since she survived, she still hangs around. And that was actually known as one of the biggest traumas that's ever happened at the Stanley Hotel, was the gas leak and explosion. She did recover. She returned to her job, which she held until her death at age 90. So she worked at the Stanley until she was 90 when she died. And she didn't die at the hotel. She died at her home in Estes Park, though. But soon after, the hotel started receiving reports of a spectral chambermaid hovering and walking through closed doors in the rebuilt guest quarters. Unmarried couples sharing a bed complained of an invisible force wedging them apart as they slept, and single men woke to find their bags had been packed and left outside the door. Estep said, "Mrs. Wilson does what she wants to who she wants." So reportedly, she is somebody who was very conservative, obviously, and a lot of guests who go like to unpack their bag and put some things around to see if Mrs. Wilson will tidy up behind them. It's so funny to think about. Despite the numerous reported sightings of youths at the hotel fourth floor and the attic space, records show no child has ever died there. But one of the rooms that is supposedly really haunted is 401. And more than a century ago, the entire fourth floor was a cavernous attic. It's where female employees, children, and nannies stayed. Now, today's guest will report hearing children running around, laughing, giggling, and playing. Again, Richard Estep said, places get ghosts for different reasons, such as tragedy or bloodshed, but also people tend to haunt places where they were very happy during their lifetimes. I sense we are seeing people coming back because they deeply loved this hotel. And generally speaking, wherever you find people, you find ghosts. The Stanley Hotel features a variety of rooms with high paranormal activity, including the famous Stephen King Suite 217, the Ghost Hunter's favorite room 401, as well as 407 and 428. These are among our most requested rooms. Availability is limited, and apparently a lot of activity goes on there. Now, there is some photos that guests have taken of women and children being seen. So I'm going to have them on the blog today. The first one I don't know much about. It shows a room full of people on the stairs. I want to get into the stairs in a minute because there's two photos that have something to do with these stairs. So in one of them, it looks like a little girl is starting to go down the flight of stairs, and then you see everyone else like over there talking and like laughing and stuff. None of them seen this little girl. And if you look at the security footage, she's not on the security footage. She's just in this photo. It is very, very strange. Another photo, a guest was entering in, and right in the lobby, he took a picture of the stairs. And later, looking at that photo, you can see a woman standing on the stairs. It got so big that this photo was shared on like ABC News. It's insane. And it just like, it looks like a woman in like an old-timey dress. It's very surreal to look at. And that's where I wanted to mention the staircase. It's just like a wooden spiral one though. So it's a bulkier one. It's not going to be like a slim spiral staircase, but it just kind of goes up in a way where it keeps rounding out as you go up all the floors. There is elevators as well, but there is the staircase. And some people say it's like a portal because the security footage never catches anything, but the photos do. It's really weird. Is it a portal to like the other realm or world or whatever it is? It's crazy to think about. There is some other pictures in the music hall, and that's where I want to talk about Lucy, who was a 13 to 16-year-old runaway. And the maintenance men were closing up for the night when they found the girl hiding in the concert hall. They told her that she had to leave. And with the weather dropping below zero that night, she was later found dead in the nearby area. I have not seen any proof on this. I mean, I think ghost hunters have talked about it, so I'm assuming like it's a true story. I just kept looking up stuff about Lucy and couldn't really find much. But she is known to haunt the concert hall now, and you can see the videos from like ghost hunters and such, which I will have linked in the blog, where they are talking to her and doors are opening and closing by themselves. It's very strange. Another guest was on a ghost tour when she took a picture going down a flight of stairs, and there's like a girl that you can see in the photo. It's pretty blurry, but it is very strange because she said the man walking in front of her was the only person in front of her. There was nobody else. So it is very strange. Another girl, Danielle Moon, who was 11, her and her parents, I guess, traveled to Estes Park from Fort Morgan to see the famous elk. They came to the Stanley for some sightseeing for a different nature, hoping for a paranormal experience. The family set out to wander the hotel when they met a member of the cleaning staff who shared insights about the place's guest and the unliving guest, pretty much. This little girl told Richard Estep that she said that the cleaning staff said that the ghosts don't like vacuums, and that the ghosts hate it when vacuums are on, so they usually turn off by themselves. Pretty strange, a little scary, spooky, but nothing too crazy. I know we've touched on a lot of other things, and this is definitely going to be one of the shorter episodes I have for you guys, but I still want to talk about it. I love The Shining, and I definitely love the movie. It's a classic. Jack Nicholson, I mean, come on. But it's a good one if you haven't seen it, if you need something for spooky season. But remember, our spooky season is going to continue through until December. It's going to be a full 10 episodes. And I'm really excited for some future ones that are coming up. I definitely have to put in the work because a lot of these cases I don't know much about. Not really cases, these places. Some of them I know quite a bit, and other ones are pretty fresh. So it's like I'm kind of learning the history and the spookiness along with you guys if you guys don't know them as well. But yeah, out of all the places we're going to talk about, I'm pretty sure this is the most like lighthearted one. I mean, like he states, like these ghosts, it's almost like they just love this place. It's not even like they're really haunting it. They might give you a little bit of a fright, like if you walk in your room and all your stuff is packed, or you hear giggling down the hall. But really, it's just like a lot of stuff didn't happen there. It was just the ghosts kind of came back in a way, and that's where they talked about ghosts coming back to like the place in their life that they loved being the most, and I think that's really awesome. It's a little change. It may not be like super super spooky, but it is a nice little change of pace for this whole season. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys are enjoying this series. And I will be back next week with episode 4. I will be back next week, and I will see you guys then.